Hello, 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 lovely people. Hope everyone's doing well. Let me immediately switch on over. Wakey, wakey. Time for feedback. It's good to see you all here. Hello, Lily. Hello, Beauty. Hello, Powertail, Barzani, and Swan. Hope you're all doing well. I will say, this is the one time that you have a valid excuse to skip class. Because we actually have probably like a more important class going on in the next classroom. So for people that are workshop supporters, we actually have a workshop going on right now with Kim Ava. It just started, so I'll give you an excuse this time. You know, just don't let me see you leave the classroom. Yeah, go make the most of it. I think that's a really interesting talk. So if you are a workshop supporter, go and check that out. But otherwise, welcome. It's good to see you all here. Lovely to see you all. Hope everyone is having a good time. Today's going to be a busy session, and I don't know why, but like prep also just took way longer than I was thinking. So we are probably going to have less time for preamble today, and we're just going to dive probably quicker into it than normal. I downgraded the subscription a while ago, but I can still join the workshop. I just tested it. Thank you, Lily. I think, honestly, there are some issues going on right now with just like the automation when it comes to managing people's subscriptions. So, yeah, you know what? If you have access, you know, go and join it. That is honestly an issue on our end. Yeah, but I appreciate you saying so, Lily. I can't do you guys like that. Look, if it's our mistake, then you might as well make the most of it, you know? And look, you're kind enough for letting us know, so we appreciate that. Swan is saying, get those hands raised emojis ready. Let's go. But yeah, hope everyone is having a good week. What happened in my week? Let's have a think. Yeah, it's pretty much same thing as like last couple of weeks, honestly. Is a new PE website look gonna drop today? Not today. No. I hope that I can drop it over the weekend. That is the current goal. So the end of the weekend, I'm hoping that I can make like a big announcement and then we can drop like the new website. Because the thing is, I keep thinking about like, how should I explain this? There are, in the beginning, it was supposed to be like just an overwrite to the landing page, right? So like we wanted to do a refresh of the landing page and that was it. Now it kind of turned into like, okay, but if we're doing that, then might as well do like a website refresh of some of the other pages too. And it just has like this knock-on effect on like a bunch of stuff happening. Plus also, next month, I do wanna start promoting, releasing like the course and all that kind of stuff. So at the end of this week, I basically also want to kickstart the early access for our Academy page as well. But for that, I need to do a bunch more website work. So that is the main thing that I need to focus on this week to get that all in order. And then I'm going to do something special where we're going to go in early access, but I will be a part of that early access period like heavily as well. So that means that for the beginning period of our Academy that we're going to be launching, I'm going to do early access. And that means that I'm going to get involved with helping you personally with your environments. So that would mean probably multiple times a week we get together and we just build an environment together. And that would be like a classroom kind of setting. But for that, obviously, I need to build some pages and content and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on this week. So more on that at the end of the week. As I make a full announcement and kind of have worked out like all the details. Because we are making a switch from like my contract work to doing this full time again. So that means that I have a lot of time that I'm kind of trying to fill up now and trying to organize my schedule around too. So, yes, but thank you for asking. I am freaking excited. I'm normally not like the most excitable person, right? But like I'm genuinely like, well, part nervous and like part excited for the academy to drop. Like all the live lessons and all the stuff that we've been building. Yeah, needs to be in somewhat of a good position by not the end of the week, because we aren't going to go straight into it, right? But the website will be released. You can already have like a sneak peek and get to see it from the outside. And then once we have our first class sort of gathered, then we can go into the actual content. Yeah, but super excited about that. So that's going to be happening over the weekend. We'll do like part 1, basically just a website overhaul. That's going to be launching first, and then more information will follow as we do that. But I'm freaking pumped. I'm freaking excited. I have so many ideas. Like I have so many things that I've already been building up over time that I really want to pour into like the academy and really make it like this all-rounded thing. Not just lessons about like a technical aspects. I also want to build lessons around like how to build a portfolio, how to negotiate salaries, like how to like even move countries and all those like things that we get to do as like game artists, you know? I want to build like a comprehensive thing around it. And then we also sat down with the team as well, and they came up with like a bunch of their own good ideas that we will also be implementing over time too. So I'm freaking pumped. I'm freaking excited. I am ready for the switch, honestly. But yeah, I appreciate it. How was everyone else's week been though? How was everyone else doing? Hello Darpan. Hello Alessandro. Good to see you both as well. But yeah, other than that, honestly, it's full focus on the academy stuff at the moment. For me, that means website, and then as soon as the website is launched, we'll dive into making more content, which I'm excited for. But yeah, what else has been happening? It's pretty standard, normal working week. Apart from that, honestly, not too much is happening. Yeah. Oh yeah, we had my parents over yesterday. It was nice. They came over for a coffee, which is also really weird to say that as a unique thing, you know, because since I've grown up, like basically from like as I left uni, right? I've always lived in different countries, so it's still weird that my parents can just like, you know, let me know like, hey, we're coming over for a coffee. And we're having coffee like, I don't know, 15 minutes later. Still weird. There's still a part of me that's like still getting used to that whole idea. But it is nice though. It is nice. Not complaining about it at all. But yeah, honestly, that's mostly it. I haven't really been keeping up with like any gaming news. Maybe the only thing is just because I've seen like a bunch of my friends and I guess colleagues, even though like far removed colleagues, being very excited about the game that they just released. Forza Horizon 6 has released, so which is really, really good. So congratulations to the Playgrounds team who's working on that. That's why I'm saying like colleagues, because we've never really been in the same building. I know a couple of people from that team, but that's about it. We even had, interestingly enough, we've had a couple of people that came through Beyond Extend, then got their first job at Playground Games, and now they're like part of that first release. So it's really cool to see that. And Joe as well. One of those people, including Joe. There's a bunch of people that actually came through Beyond Extend. Really interesting to see that. You know, so congratulations on the team. I would love to play it. But honestly, for the time that I can dedicate to it, and just the average price of like a AAA game these days, I'm honestly not sure when I'm going to pick it up, you know? I might just wait for the sale, because I don't even have time to play games. My friends are playing it at the moment. Hell yeah. It does sound like it's like a really, really good game. It does sound like it. And honestly, like if I'm gonna play a racing game, I would just naturally gravitate towards like Forza Horizon. I think they're like really, really good games. Even though I've not seen anything about 6, you know, but I've played 4 and 5, and both of them were like really, really good. I really enjoyed 4 more than 5. Don't know why. I think it was something about the progression in 5 that kind of felt like it was just throwing too much at you. And then I was just like, well, there's nothing to work for here. And there's so many cars already in my catalog that I kind of got overwhelmed. Yeah. Not Mario Kart? No, I'm not a Nintendo person. I mean, my partner has a Switch, but yeah. I mean, we played Mario Kart on the Switch 1. You know, because it's just a fun party game. But I would never play that by myself, honestly. I think when it comes to racing games, I've always been a big fan of Gran Turismo, right? I mean, I'm talking about like the old Gran Turismos. And then Need for Speed, you know? Underground 1 and 2, especially 2. Oh my god. Need for Speed Underground 2 was so good. So good. That is probably... You know, when like a lot of games started adopting like the open world nature of things, and open worlds were still like this new thing, and it was like, wait, what? What do you mean I can drive my car wherever I want now? That's freaking awesome. Yeah, that was really cool. And then Gran Turismo as well. I used to enjoy those games, especially for the progression. You know, there's something really satisfying about like Gran Turismo's progression. I mean, probably not these days because it feels like really grindy, I guess, you know? It is pretty brutal. If you want to play like an old like Gran Turismo game now. Oh, Street Racer. Yeah, I think those kind of like, because it has a legacy in like arcade games, right? Most of those I didn't really gravitate towards. I think there was something about... Oh, Beauty. Yeah, the old Most Wanted. Oh my god, that game was so good. Okay. I'm not even going to talk about Street Racer anymore because Most Wanted was probably... Oof. Man, that was such a good game. You know what I did in that game? I still remember it. Like, I had a Mazda, like, RX-7. I still remember the paint job and everything like that. It was, like, white with, like, black flames on it or something like that, you know? And what I did, there was this weird mechanic where if you won a race against another person, well, not another person, like against like one of those like NPC bosses, right? You could, what was the choice again? I can't remember all the choices, but there was a choice between a unique upgrade that you could only get from that boss, or you would get like pink slips, so you would win their car or something else, you know? And I did like a full run where I was like, I'm only gonna get like the best upgrades. So I'm gonna re-roll. I don't want their car. I don't give a shit about that. I just want their upgrades. And I made a car that was like souped up to the max. And then I would invite my friends over and beat them with it. Oh my god. That was so fun though. That was so fun. Maybe there's something there, you know? Like oh man. All the old games, so many memories. I remember, because I used to be the person who like invited friends in, right? So we used to invite friends and then we would just play games. Especially around the age of like 15, 16 or something like that. Because before that, my parents were kind of against like, oh, too much games. Like, we don't really like that. Again, look at me now, mom and dad. But so remember, like the day that I bought like a, was it I bought or my dad bought it? I can't remember. He bought like a splitter. These were like adapters that you could have for your PlayStation 2. And it would basically go into one of your controller ports, and it would split it into 4 controller ports. Like it was like a little frisbee kind of shape. And I remember playing Rising Sun, like Medal of Honor, Rising Sun, until they dragged us off the controllers. Like honestly, oh my god, was ridiculous. The amount of time that we spent on that game. And we would always play like just deathmatch, but it would be like the one shot one kill variant or something like that. So you had like a bazooka, or you had like a well rod, which was like a pistol with like a single shot, and you had to like twist it open to put like a bullet into it and then twist it back to shoot it. So ridiculous. But we used to play that all the time. So everyone was running around like trying to blast each other with like explosives, and it was me with like a sneaky well rod, just ping ping, trying to catch people off. So fun. Man, I'm so glad I lived through the age of like actual couch co-op. You know, when that came up and it became a big thing. Oh my god. So good. Beauty is saying, I bought Most Wanted for the PS3, came back home and realized that it's a new one. Yeah. That's not great. I think I tried to play like the newer version. And I think... God, I can't even remember how far I got. I think I must have played like an hour and then I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I don't need this, you know? But yeah. Old games. Oh my god, reminiscent. God of Play Godzilla Save the Earth. That reminds me, I used to play a lot of demo discs. And there was one demo disc that was also like a game that we constantly played. And it was like, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like an old game where you were like walking around as like a giant like animal. It was like, what was included in it? I can't remember the name. Shit. What's the name of the animal? The one with the pincers with like the weird rounded eyes. Can't remember. Anyway, you play as one of those and you just smash buildings and you smash them into like other people playing like monkeys and all that kind of stuff. It was so fun. And it was just a demo disc. We just played the one level that we had access to the entire time. Oh my god. But yeah, I'm gonna see. Do I still have some of those games? I don't think. No, I don't think I have my PlayStation 2 games here. I think they're still with my brother, so... I do have some, like, Xbox games? What is this? Like, Far Cry 3... Battlefield 3... Clive Barker's Jericho? And then... Oh my god. Let me see, what else do I have? See, this is all PC stuff already, so, yeah. Did you have a Dreamcast growing up? No, I did not actually. So I had a PlayStation 1. Well, so I started playing like with my nephew when he had like an Atari. And then my other nephew had like a Nintendo 64, right? So that's where I kind of went to them whenever I wanted to play some stuff, like or like if we visited stuff. But then the first console that I got was just a PlayStation 1. I think it was even... I don't think I had the original one. I had the Mini, I think. Did I? I can't remember. No, I think I had the original one. So you had the original one, then a PlayStation 2, then an Xbox 360, and then I moved into PC after that point. And then my brother still has like the new Xbox and like I think a PlayStation 4 and 5 as well. But I kind of dipped out like after the 360. I went into like PC gaming. But yeah, oh my god, so many good memories. So many good memories. But yeah, like I said, like before that, my parents were kind of against it, you know? So they were like, nah, we don't know what this technology is going to be doing. This stuff is scary. Like it's going to hurt your brain function, all that kind of stuff, you know? And this is something that they actually said to me recently, is also they had a PC, but they actually didn't want me to play on the PC because they were too addicted themselves. So they were like, hey, look, you can only have an hour and then we get to play, you know? But they never said like the we get to play part. It always just felt as like, no, we're protecting you. And then I went and did my own stuff and then they were just playing games when I was gone. So here's me thinking that my parents are trying to protect me, you know? And I swear to God, I lived with this for like 30 years or something like that, you know? I was thinking that they were just like, no, we're like more like, I guess, Luddites, right? That's what you call them. It's just like, no, we don't believe in technology. Like we don't want you to get addicted to it. So we just want you to stay away from it. I was completely wrong. Like they weren't Luddites. Like they were just like as addicted as I was. They just didn't want me on it so that they could play more. Which makes sense, right? Because some of the core memories that I have from like gaming for the first time was when we were playing Quake 2 and my mother actually taught me how to cheat in that game. Because she knew all the console commands. I still don't know how she got them. Because I don't know if she had like, if that was like in the manual or something like that, but she just figured out like, oh, you can do like all these like things and you can just like give yourself unlimited ammo and unlimited lives and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, wait, what? This is fucking crazy. But yeah, that was fun. Oh, Quake 2 is still such a good game, by the way. I love it. Swan is saying rules for thee, not for me. The old GTA cheat codes were crazy. Yeah, and this is a game that I also didn't play, but like the old Age of Empires cheat codes, they were also crazy. Like, what was one of them? Like Big Bertha? I can't remember. Dang it. There were a couple of cheat codes where you could live, where you could honestly drive around in the car like shooting rockets, like in like Age of Empires. You know? It's like, just, okay, someone put this in. This is fucking crazy. With GTA, I never really cheated, I think. Because at that point, I was playing the original ones, like the top-down ones, right? And I was trying to figure out this game, but then I also didn't understand what the hell that I was doing. So most of my play sessions was literally me stealing a car, bumping it into like a bunch of stuff, and then trying to sell it, like, because you could drive it up to the pier and it would like, you could sell it like, and it would be like lifted up by a crane. I don't know why I did that. I always used to do that, like all the time. It's like drive across a city, like trying to sell cars, and then I didn't even use the money half the time. Oh yeah, Blue Cobra. Yeah, that's it. Firing bullets and destroying the Middle Era buildings in Age of Empire was the best. there was such a mysticism around cheating back in the day, you know? Because the internet wasn't the internet that we know now, right? It was very fragmented, like you didn't have Google back in the day. So it was always like, if someone came up to you and they said like, oh, watch this, you know? And then they'll type in some random stuff. And then all of a sudden, like, something pops up on screen. And it's like, wait, what? You're driving like a Cobra car, like firing bullets? What the hell? You know? That was like, it's almost like you're like a digital, like, shaman, you know? Just like conjuring up, like, these random things. It was super cool. I do miss that. Like when the internet was around, but it wasn't overtaking anything just yet. Just like the twilight zone of the internet coming up, I guess. Because everything felt really scrappy and put together. It was really interesting. Tim Podcast Part 2. Oh my god, not the P word. No, not the podcast. It is so interesting how many people still bring that up. Even some of our workshop guests, you know? Like they'll bring up like, oh yeah, the podcast, when is that coming back? I'm like, no, not you. Yeah, early gaming was so fun. I mean, games are still like great. It's just I do miss that sense of like mysticism, you know, when like nothing was like readily available to you. I do miss that, because yeah, some of my earlier gamer memories are just like going to the shop, buying a book, and then being like, oh my god, this game sounds amazing. And then when the game came out, I would just buy it off the shelves, you know? Like not looking it up online, it was all physical, you know? Marius is saying maybe it's like Beetlejuice, saying podcast 3 times makes it appear. Hey, who knows? Like here's the thing, like with the podcast, I really enjoy doing it, right? But if we're gonna do it again, I would want to do it in person. I think that would be so much fun. But that is the downside about living back in Belgium. There's no one really around me that is like doing this stuff, right? So you would almost have to go somewhere else and then have a physical podcast, or maybe record like a couple ones and then spread them out or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, the podcast was really fun. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen in the future? Maybe at Indigo? I can't go to Indigo. I just looked, and that's like the final date of my contract. So I'm gonna run out my contract, and then after that, I have more free time. So that's what I'm gonna be doing. Like after this, like I should have way more time and more flexibility to go to like any events. So I will be going to like more events. Because that sounds really interesting. Like I was literally looking at like train tickets today for like Indigo to kind of go and check it out, but it would just, yeah. It's literally the final week of my contract, so I want to do that out, and then we'll see what's gonna happen. So you're saying, flying to Belgium to guest star on a BE podcast? Let's go! That would be fun. That would be fun, you know, like, because honestly, like, when I sent out like the testimonial like survey thing that I sent out this week, right? There were a couple of people who filled in, and they basically gave me an insight into what Beyond Extent meant for them. And it was really interesting to see that we had people who joined we had a couple of people who joined from like way before, right? When Beyond Extent was a tiny little baby. And now they're like in the industry, sometimes they're like mid or seniors, and then talking about like how we helped in that journey. That was really cool. So I was thinking about that, as in it could be fun to then do like a BE podcast around that, right? And then if we're gonna do like more traveling or something like that, see if we can talk to like some of the people that know about us. That would be so fun. Be so fun. Lily is saying, I'm thinking of going to Digital Dragons next year. It sounds amazing. Yeah. We have a person in the community who's sharing like a bunch of stuff, right? Really cool to see. I have honestly never seen anything from Digital Dragons. I know people that went to it because I've worked with people who were then at like CD Projekt Red and all that kind of stuff, so it felt kind of close to them. And yeah, I've always heard like a very moderate, like mixed bag. But then sometimes what happens, and this also happens with me, by the way, I'm not immune to this. We get a little bit cynical, you know? We get a little bit of that cynical juice going on. And sometimes you have to just ignore that and just go to an event yourself and then experience it for what it is, right? Rather than all this built up like stuff that you hear from like other people. Yeah, so I do want to do, I think Digital Dragons sounds fun. I definitely want to do that as well. I think another one, and I don't know if they've done one this year, is like Reboot Blue, which I think has always been in like Dubrovnik. It just like it sounds like a nice location. anyone else have any recommendations of games industry events to go to? Because honestly, I don't know too many of them, to be honest. For example, I've only learned from like Indigo like this year, that it was happening. What else? Everything Procedural also happens like pretty close by. I do want to check that out. Because usually one of our co-organizers for the Games Artist Meetup also is there doing presentations and talks and stuff. So that would be fun to like go there, catch up, and then also get to learn from him as well. That would be so fun. So that's one on the list. What else is there? Visit me at GDC. GDC would be fun. It's just like for GDC, and we've talked about this like at length already, right? For GDC, you have to like really save up as a European, right? Yeah. Dutch Game Week in December. It's in Breda. Oh, that's close by. That would be fun. I think Breda might actually be at that distance where you could technically cycle it as well. If I were that crazy. Come hang out in the Orlando game scene. I don't. You said Orlando, and I know that is a place, and then I try to literally visualize it as you spoke. And if you were to give me a dart, I honestly have no fucking idea where I need to throw it in like the US. I'm assuming it's gonna be West Coast, right? But that's honestly as close as I get. And I might even be wrong on that. Because I have no clue. I know some of like the bigger ones, right? I know where New York is. I know where California is. I know where like Texas is. And that's it. The rest of it, it's kind of nebula, Even Las Vegas. I don't even know where Las Vegas is. Orlando, Florida. Okay, Florida is like East Coast, right? That's like the little sticky out bit that goes into the sea. Look at me playing like GeoGuessr with a chat. Okay. Yep. Okay, so we're getting closer. I do want to go to America at some point. McFell, that is super helpful. That's where Florida Man lives. That's where the next GTA takes place. I know nothing about GTA 6. It's weird. I've never really cared that much for the GTA games. Probably the last one that I played was no, that's not true. San Andreas, right? San Andreas was the last one. And then after that, I kind of dropped off. So, got no clue. Well, technically that's not true. I played like GTA 5 for a little bit, but it just didn't grab me at all. So I stopped almost immediately. But yeah. They also host the Breda Game Drinks each month too, I believe. Yeah, the issue with those like events is that they're awesome if you're local. Right? So if you are like close to that city, it is nice. But what that means is that if you live like a little bit further away, like I do, then it would always mean having to stay somewhere, right? Which is always like an additional cost as well. So yeah. Yeah, I don't go because it's too far for me. Yeah. But I would love to, like, maybe not those like smaller events, but I would love to go to like festivals, right? So like the Develop, like you said, maybe. Develop, I didn't go last year, even though I was thinking about it. It was just, it's expensive, right? For what you potentially get out of it. But maybe next year? Well, maybe this year, I guess. When is that? When is Develop? When is Develop? Oh, G Develop is a free, fast, open source game engine. Wow. Okay, not what I wanted. Develop Brighton. Let's have a look. It is during the summer somewhere, yeah. Okay, July. July. Let's actually have a look together. So, switch it on up. Can I attend? Passes and pricing. Let's have a look. Audio, performance, 1 day conference, free expo only pass. Oh my god, come on, Expo Plus Pass, Expo Plus Plus Pass, and Expo Plus 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 Pass? Guys, come on. Why make it so hard? Make it simple. Okay, let's actually have a look. So, 3-day conferences. Early bird is like 1,000. God, so much money though. What is included? Let's have a look. Indie Power Up. I have no idea what that means. Official networking events. That's pretty cool. Lunch is included. That's pretty nice. And then, okay, so you do get access to like all the conferences, which is pretty good. Which is pretty good. What is happening? Am I going to be disappointed by not seeing anything for art again? Oh no, there's some stuff. Shaping the Sims. Oh, Frontier Developments is coming. On the lore around art. Oh, okay, thank you. Can I... Okay. Who is the artist? What's the circumstance about the artist's creation? And what is the fabric it tries to weave? And what parts are connected? Why art can't stand on its own and always comes with a context. On the importance of said context, what does the artist bring along? Its surrounding, and what part it comes from ourselves. On the importance of red thread that weaves itself through the body of work. Be it PR, mid-building, or unfortunate circumstance, how the context drives and tanks the value of an artwork. Okay. That sounds fake. You know? Sounds a bit wishy-washy. But hey, who's to say? Like, we still need to improve the way that we describe our workshops too. So, hey, there's some self-criticism there too. Defining and achieving visual quality. Okay. Perspectives. Insights into consideration of quality is, how it's perceived. Nice. Conflicts interactive. That's cool. Jesus, that's expensive? Yeah, this is the thing, right? Like, I mean, the games industry... Okay, so, especially AAA, is not really known for, like, making a shit ton of money, especially as a person, like, working within it. Especially, like, let's say, lower seniority, right? Especially. I think that's why I've never really gone to any of these events, because they were, most of the time, just, like, very prohibitively expensive. And then even if you can afford it, it's always, like, a cost... a cost versus outcome benefit, right? Like, what do I actually get from going there? Because if this is all I'm getting, right, as an artist, right, for specifically the stuff that I'm going to be looking at, if I go to all the artist talks, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 talks in total, right, for the art track. That is not enough to convince me that I'm getting a lot of value out of like £1,000, right? Which is like, I don't know, 1,200 euros or something like that. Maybe they are still adding talks. Maybe. But then I would expect it to show here, right? Because here's the thing, like, sure, they might still be adding talks, but if you don't say that to a person who is willing to commit, you know, then that's also a wrong thing to do. Let's have a look though, because I think here's my thing in general, right? And this is not specifically to what Develop is doing. I don't think there's a lot of art talks in general on any conference, really. Because I've always found it like really difficult to find like interesting art talks. I don't know why that is. I think it's just because there's a realization that actually most of the companies out there, for the most part, they just use the same kind of workflows, you know? Maybe a little bit of a spin here or spin there, but yeah. But I mean, I'm not only interested in talks about art, right? Like stuff like this, like how does one freelance, and like how do you basically build up additional security without relying too heavily on the industry? I think those talks are like super topical for right now, right? So they're like super interesting to me as well. Oh, and those are free? Okay, so the roundtables are free. Interesting. Okay, so designing immersive and explorable open worlds with narrative encounters. That's pretty cool. I love that though. Because this is super relevant to what we get to do as environment artists as well. You will not be doing the encounter design themselves, but you will be interacting with a team that is setting them up. I'm interested. So it says Maverick. But that's cool. I like that. Schedule. I think all the talks are already booked in. Ooh, the ethics of using AI in games. Dun, dun, dun. Let's actually have a look. What else is here? Like Lily is saying, like playground games, not playground games, playgrounds actually has a lot of art talks, but it's just not games. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like that's again, it is more interesting, let's say, as an artist. But then I think most people what they look for, right, is, let's say you're an artist, right? You look for stuff that is like hyper, like super specifically relevant to you. And then if you then can pick up additional things on the side, then that's like a thing that you pick up, right? It's more like it's a nice to have. But yeah. I mean, I'm basically explaining in like very long form why I don't really go to like a lot of like these events. That's basically what this comes down to, you know? Because it's always like, I'm always like hyper vigilant about like the amount of money that you're going to be spending. Because also think about, for most people, if you're not local, 1,000 just to get in, 1,200 euros to get in, let's say convert it, right? Staying, which is also going to be really expensive because all the hotels already know that like people are going to be fully booked for that period. So that's going to be super expensive too. And then you have to travel there still. And also eat. So yeah, by the time you're done, you're talking about like 2,000 euros or something like that. Low estimate, probably. Yeah. Hey, Matthew. Nice. Audio director at Frontier. Let's see. Fireside chat with Zaum. How unionization empowers everyone. From Zaum. Is this like the original people from Zaum? Interesting. A beginner's guide to TikTok. Do. Yeah. Cool. He said the forbidden acronym. Oh no. Okay. Enough chatter about this. Let's actually dive into some feedback. So, you know the drill. Raise your hand in the chat if you want to go first, and then we'll talk about your work first. Power Tales first. Let's go. Yeah. Power Tail was super quick. You just had it ready. Oh my god. Yeah, it doesn't have to be an emoji, Vidar. Like whatever you type up. Like you can even type me. You can type a hand, you can type me, whatever works. Cool. Okay, we're gonna start with power hand. Power hand, power tail. Right. We have not done any overpaints here, so let me look with what I can help you. Let me go to your little thread. Oh yeah, this also reminds me. Apologies for people that have been waiting for the feedback from last week. I honestly just forgot. Because I think my attention got grabbed by something else like after the stream. And then I just completely forgot to do it. So I will still update like the feedback from last week as well. Just in a combined post. Right. Let's have a look here. Hope you're doing well. Here's the latest from me. There's a list of stuff that I want to get done, still including now addressing the things we had discussed in previous weeks. Okay. As I move on to the list of stuff that I would love to get some general feedback on the scene, anything you can spot that feels off, still needs attention, things that are missing, the textures, and the door are still placeholder, the values in the vertex painting. Okay. Cool. Right. Okay. General feedback then. Let's have a look. I think the main question here for me immediately would be, how can we push quality, right? How can we push quality in this scene? So let's actually have a look. What that means for me is, sure, the textures are still placeholder. I think one big thing that I can already see is, how can we merge surfaces better, right? Or like blend surfaces together. So that's a pretty generic thing, or like a pretty broad thing, but it's literally going into like every surface and being like, okay, close to the staircase, there's gonna be dirt here, and there's gonna be dirt here, right? Also, there's gonna be dirt around these things. Maybe there's like a little bit of a spill happening here as well. And literally wherever you can see a texture that is not blended with the surface surrounding it, we need to do additional blending, right? So that can mean dirt here. That can also mean like these sections where you just have maybe around these poles, like the wall is like a bit broken up or something like that. Or maybe it's just dirt. But anything that we can do to merge some of these surfaces, right? So that everything kind of blends together. And basically wherever you have a sharp cutoff, that is, wherever you have a sharp line, that is usually an indication of like, yeah, I need to do more work, right? So that means this sharp line, that also means like these sharp lines, like wherever you have just like very straight line, that is a good indication that that needs more work, right? So you'll have like a bit more blending here, more blending here. You do some like more blending around like the edges of the frame here, so that we kind of see like exposed brick or something like that. And then you just do like an entire pass on your scene like this. That would be the first thing that I would look at. Literally thinking about like, okay, what are going to be the ways that I'm going to be blending everything together, right? In your case, it's probably going to be vertex painting first, and then additional decals like in certain areas, right? So this is going to take like a bit of time and a couple of things to work together. Cool. Next thing that I would want you to look into is how can we increase the contrast in roughness. Like, I want to see more surface variation because you are playing with, and this is for any scene ever, right? If we want to increase interest in our scenes, we need to find a way to break up some of the textural surfaces, right? So in this scene where we're dealing with a lot of very dull materials like plaster, stone, cobblestone, like anything that kind of stuff, it's not going to be shiny by itself. So we need to basically come up with excuses that we can add shiny stuff into this material, into this environment. So remember when I said like this spill here? Make it water. Make it water. Where does that water come from? Maybe there's like water dripping down here and it created like a little puddle here. But what I would focus on with that is obviously whenever you're going to add water, you are also asking for attention to those surfaces. So we have to be very careful with how you add them and how you then massage them into the rest of the environment, right? So puddles, little water, water leaks, like all that kind of stuff can really enhance the feel of the environment, but we need to be careful with how we do that, right? Like rain and wet surfaces, yeah, exactly. And then also, I would do a pass on your roughness for your main textures, right? I would say in the areas that there's no damage or barely any damage, increase the roughness so that we're getting like a little bit of shine onto those surfaces, right? So for example, we know that, let's say this core center, you make it just like a slightly more shiny. And then you then surround that with like broken up, like cobblestone, like you already have, right? But that's going to drive the contrast and it's going to make all your surfaces look like a bit more interesting, right? We also need to do that in conjunction with like updating the lighting as well, because otherwise you can do all these changes, but if you don't have like lights in certain places to make it like appear better, that's also going to be part of the issue, right? So you can tweak the surfaces, but you also need to keep lighting in mind for this as well. So roughness variation is the second thing. And I think in this case, what I want to suggest is more variation and more density. So what I mean by that is that you have all these buckets and all these barrels. They're all clearly the same barrel and bucket, right? how do you then differentiate between the two, right? It can literally be as simple as like making a new material instance and like multiplying like a slight color differentiation between the two, and that gives you two assets instead of one to already place down, right? It can be something fancy like a position based like color variation that you do, whatever you need to make that work, right? It's going to give you more flexibility in how you use those assets. Then I would really go crazy with like some hanging stuff, right? Like you have ropes here, just use more ropes, you know, like have like nets and ropes, because this stuff could look really cool if you just have like a bunch of just like, I don't know, like fishing nets just like hanging about the place, right? And then you use the ropes again to kind of like hang them against some of the surfaces. And the benefit about this is you already have the ropes. So half of this asset is already made. The only thing that you need is just like a tileable for some like hanging, just a tileable for some like fishing netting, right? And then you basically put that together with the ropes, and now you can make like any type of fishing net you want. You just like bash those two together, spend a little time modeling, and then you make some cool shit out of it. Right, but what the goal of that is that I want to increase like the amount of like interest in the scene, because right now it does look like a little bit barren, and you'll see as soon as you start to like increase like the amount of stuff that's hanging, it's already going to look like way more interesting, right? And then you can really start playing around with like these pieces of like rope, you know. A common trick that I do, and I do this a lot with like ropes, is whenever you're doing ropes, is I always do something like this, where I have like a rope that is on top and like a rope that is at the bottom, and then just like, I don't know, fasten that around something a couple of times, and then have like a single rope going somewhere else, right? And then maybe you can repeat like some of the patterns. Like something like this, like I don't know if it's just instinctual now, but I tend to always do this, where I have like a single rope, double rope, single rope, and then you can work with like the amount of knots or like things that you hang around like some of the poles. But man, I cannot tell you enough how much I love ropes, because it adds such a nice dynamic to any scene. Because you could literally have that as like a foreground element, and then started using it as, okay, let's say there's like a rope attached to this pole, and then that goes up to this pole, and now we are blending in like a leading line into this whole environment, right? And you can then use that, I don't know, maybe it comes out in the foreground somewhere, you know? And you can really start building like a cool intricate nest. And the good thing is, sure, it takes like a bit of time, like modeling and like, I don't know, spline-based modeling or whatever you want to do. It takes a bit of time, but it looks so good, and it adds such a unique flavor to what otherwise is like a very modular environment, right? So ropes, hanging stuff, focus on like cheap stuff to make, because once I have a net that's hanging, I literally take the same net, I just run a simulation on it, I let it fall on the floor, collapse it into itself, clean it up a little bit, and I have like a pile of ropes. Love that stuff, you know? Love it. Oh my god. Yeah, but then also density. Think about like density of stuff, right? Because right now you have the barrels, the buckets, sure, I want to see some additional things. Ideally something that is like, again, easy to make, but give me some flavor, right? Like maybe there's like a cup or two here, so that people are like filling up their cups as they're drinking. Maybe there's like, I don't know, like a freaking wheelbarrow or something like that, you know, or like a shovel or someone's tools. It kind of depends on the thematic that you want to set, right? If we're going with like a nautical thematic, you probably just want to have like fishing gear, and the fishing gear, again, could just be a pole with a rope. You just shrink the rope down. You make it look like a fishing pole. You just make it work, you know? Just make it work. And then, yeah, hang stuff. Hang more stuff in places. You got like some of these baskets, right? Like some of these baskets could be like really nice to just like hang up all over the place. Yeah, more set dressing, more stuff. Because the thing is, like, I always recommend this. Go crazy with this shit first. Like, if imagine the entire scene is full, right? Full of stuff. I think that's better because then you can start carving out what you don't want to then reveal what you want to reveal in the scene, right? But yeah, I would approach it from that side. Cool. I hope that was helpful. But yeah, just to recap, blending surfaces, no sharp lines, roughness variation is going to help a lot. And variation in the amount of assets and the density of those assets, that's going to help a lot here. And again, focus on cheap stuff, you know? Think smart and work smart and hard, but I prefer to be on like the smart spectrum and be smart with it. But yeah. Thank you, that was very helpful. Also do these coming weeks. Yes. But again, like, it looks like I added a lot of stuff, right? But again, I want you to be very production oriented and try to make the most with the least amount of resources, right? So if there is something that you can just take, add a color overlay, that's fine. If there is something that you can just take, you can break it up and make a destroyed version of it, that's fine. You know, try to be clever with this sort of stuff. Cool. Thank you, PowerTail. Appreciate it. Bum bum bum. Hey Zoe. Hello Sheila. Good to see you both. Oh Sheila, thank you so much again for like the great recommendation. I really appreciate it. And Zoe, congratulations on landing a new job. I saw that popping up on my LinkedIn. I was gonna message you actually about that, but yeah, congratulations. Bum bum bum. And Vidar was next. Let's actually switch on over to Vidar. Whoop. There we go. Zoe's saying, thank you, I'm so tired. The feeling of joining a new company and just get overwhelmed by like freaking onboarding and stuff you have to do. But yeah, that's awesome though. Congratulations. Say hi to a bunch of friends there. They know who they are. You probably have talked to them before. So. Cool, Vidar, let's have a look. I have a little over 3 weeks to finish the environment. Okay. A final part of my internship for a game called Blood. It's a 3D person medieval-esque action-adventure game. The scene is based on concepts made by my talented friend Fresh Angeli. Hopefully I mispronounced that. I'm pronouncing that correctly. The main focus is on the interior, but I'm tasked with the exterior as well. They lack funding currently, so no employment, but I will keep working on my game. Wait, they lack funding? Isn't this... Oh no, it's your internship. And then, okay, they lack funding, so no employment, but I will keep working on the game in my free time, so the exterior will continue after the 3 weeks. Okay. So wait, you got 3 weeks to finish the environment. That would be the interior then, right? And then you're going to continue on the exterior. I'm looking for feedback on the material work and improving how the flatness of the scene. Okay. Right. This is always an interesting conundrum. And I'm just gonna bring up what I'm gonna be saying. I'm just gonna say what I'm thinking right now, right? I don't have a solution for this right now, but I always feel a little bit weird when we talk about professional work on the stream. Because it almost feels like I'm doing free consulting. It feels a little bit weird. I'm gonna do it regardless, but I'm curious what people think about this in the chat. Because I've had this, not that many times, right? Because most people are generally looking for like personal work. But I'd be curious to think what the chat thinks about that. Mainly interior and as much of the exterior as I can within the 3 weeks. Okay. I would honestly, the exterior honestly looks like it's not even playable space, or isn't supposed to be, right? If that is going to be the main deadline, I would honestly focus all my attention on the interior. Screw the exterior. That's what I would do. I would focus on the priority of the game. I don't know what the game is. I don't know if the exterior is playable space or not, right? But yeah, okay. So there is like, is that exterior space? Yeah. So that seems to link to the exterior. Yeah, I would honestly, for like a self prioritization, I would just focus on the stuff that the game needs, right? What is the most important thing for playable space? I would focus on that, which is probably going to be the exterior, and then see what you can do with the exterior afterwards. You were talking about how to make it feel less flat, right? Vidar saying, yeah, that's understandable. I would like to specify that it's a passion project that everyone is doing in their free time. And I did mainly for the portfolio work in agreement with my AD. Yeah, but I'm not saying that you put me in this position, right? The hope is that they would still get money from it, right? So that's why it feels weird. That other noob is saying it's hard because it's kind of like you're doing professional consulting, but I've been in spaces where it's I'm either the only 3D artist or most senior, and I have gaps in my knowledge. So it's super useful to get more eyes or ask someone else for the workflow. But then where else can you ask if there's no one else in the company? Yeah, that is true. But then even then, right? I would put the burden on the company and say like, hey, look, if you are the only person who's doing the work on this project and you need someone else to talk to, we're just going to hire a consultant. You know? Someone who is like detached from the company, can help you with the stuff that you need, and then you can go on to your merry way, right? I don't think that's a common thing to do, by the way. I don't think that's like very common. I've seen some environment artist consultants out there, but they're not that many of them. But what is always weird is that this is designed to help people get into the games industry, right? These sessions. And that's why we live stream them for free on YouTube, right? So if then like a company comes in with the expectation of their game making like extra money, I am doing free consulting for them, right? No, Vidar, like that's what I'm saying. Like, if it was a big issue, I would have said it. I would have said it before, right? But it's always a conundrum that I've struggled with. No senior environmentalists on the team and no money to hire one since no one is getting paid. Yeah, I get it. But that's just, yeah, get it. Anyway, let's focus on the feedback. You are, again, you want to improve the flatness of the scene, right? Flatness can have a lot of implications, right? I think where flatness can also come from is just from not having enough contrast in, let's say, the lighting, right? Or like all the lighting feeling very unified. So for example, when we look at this scene over here, if we focus on this one, let me put up some other music. So if you focus on a scene like this, one thing to reduce the flatness is wherever you have a light, try not to have it at the same intensity as other lights, right? Because right now, one quick way to test if your scene is flat, for example, is to just go in here and then you set it to black and white. And then you can kind of see that, and if you want to make it really clear, you can then, nope, you can just do this. We can go in and blur it. Or you can squint your eyes if you wanted to. That's also a good way to do this. But then you can already see where your attention is going, right? So in here, it goes to like the back because it is like a large surface and it's surrounded by like darker stuff, right? Which is the intent. But also you can see that some of these areas are still distracting because they have the same sort of intense value as the background, right? So that would be like a thing where you would just like reduce the intensity of the torches to then make the background stand out more. What also is apparent is that the foreground is also pretty light in values as well. So that would be another thing to potentially fix there too. But that is a good trick. You'll see me use that a couple times in this stream alone. I've done some like other overpaints in preparation already, but that would be like a good way to test. You can use this on anything you want. Martin is saying, I was always wondering why people do this analysis in their scenes. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, and for people, I forgot to mention this. If you have any questions about like what I'm doing or yeah, any questions about your own work, feel free to ask, right? This is a session for all of you. So feel free to ask any questions. So yeah, that's why we do this. It is just to get an idea of where we need to increase or decrease the value intensity of certain things, right? I'll do another thing here. If we've watched this before, then you've probably seen this already. But a way to make sure that this works is that we just increase the intensity in the back, right? We don't need to do too much. Maybe that's a bit too much already. Just for the sake of example, we increase the intensity in the back. Oh, should have saved this to like a separate layer actually. God dang it, Tim. What are you doing? Okay, let's do that again. Rasterize. Okay, so now we're going to see how we can fix that, right? So just really quickly, we're going to increase the intensity of the light in the back. That's helping a little bit as well. And then we're going to do the opposite. And we are just going to dim some of the lights and especially stuff in the foreground. And then maybe what we could do, actually give this a test. So if we go brightness and contrast. Then you can start like playing around with this stuff, right? But you can see what this does, right? We ignore all recognizable shapes. We don't look at it as like stone material or anything like that, right? Just purely focus on where your attention is going, right? In these two differentiations. So you can kind of see what that's doing, right? It's pulling your attention more towards the back, and that's where we want to go, right? Because this is the thing, like whenever we try to establish a focal point, right? Which especially when you're working on a professional game, what it is doing, it is trying to lead the player towards that location, right? And especially in this case, because I don't have like intricate knowledge of what is important in this game or where you're trying to lead people, right? But this is a thing that you can apply towards like anything. You can maybe make the main light in the back like 1500 degree Kelvin, make it slightly blue, potentially. But I think that's not the purpose of this scene, right? It feels like very almost like Mediterranean, if you get what I mean. While color contrast is actually not a bad shout by itself, it then has to be rooted in like the environment, right? Because otherwise, if we're going to change the color to being more blue, that makes no sense when there's like overhead lights, or like when the sun is like at its zenith, right? So that needs to be taken into account. Cool. So those are a couple of things that you can apply. And I would literally say you can apply that to anything in the scene. So wherever you think the player needs to go, add some sort of light source or find a way to then contrast it somehow, right? Contrast is a big topic. It has many applications. We just talked about contrast in lighting. There's contrast in textures. There's contrast in the asset density. You know, there's so many types of contrast, but it's one of my favorite things to use. Okay, cool. So we talked about that. Let me make some additional notes. Reduce and then increase the back, right? And that can be applied to anything. Now, talking about textural contrast, right? You have a lot of noise going on in your entire scene, which is distracting, right? So what I would do in this scene, make a texture variation that has less noise in it, which means probably less contrast in like the amount of differentiation there is between the base color, right? So you will have one flatter texture and then one more intense texture that you can use in certain areas, right? Because now everything feels like really equal. We need to find a way to balance that. So let's say at the bottom, you have like more noise going on, and then as you go up, it becomes less noisy, right? So it becomes cleaner as it goes up. And then if you realize that becomes like too uniform, then you can decide to paint in patches where you add like additional noise, but it's going to feel way more natural that way. Because again, the way that I think about this is if you have a chamber that is like filled with noise, right? You are asking people to pay attention to the thing that is most grabbing their attention, right? Sounds very logical, but sometimes spelling it out like really helps understand that currently the attention is not going to the barrier that you put in front, it's going to the wall in the back. So that's the thing that we need to solve, right? Because the cleaner the wall is in the back, the more the silhouette of the entrance bench or whatever it is going to stand out, right? And you want this silhouette to stand out more compared to the rest of it. Right. So yeah, couple tips there. Would it be good to approach to add some sculpted blocks that pop out and break it up alongside with the good tip you mentioned of breaking up the material? It depends. If you have time, that sounds good, but I don't think that would be like the main priority. To me, that sounds like polish. Because here's the thing, right? Like, we as environment artists, sure, we have the job of like making the environments look really good, but what we actually need to focus on first is how a player interacts with that environment, right? And then we can make it pretty. That's why level design comes first, and then we do environment art on top of it, right? Because we need to focus on the functionality of the space first before we then start set dressing it, right? So in this case, like doing those rocks sounds like a good idea, but it sounds like something that you can do at the end of the process rather than now. I would really try, if you're making a game, playtest, right? Put your mom in front of the screen, put your dad in front of the screen, put your brothers or sister in front of the screen, and just let them play it. See where they go. See where they pay attention. See what they noticed, and let them talk to you. You don't interfere, you know? You just ask them like, hey, would you want to play a game? And let me know what you think, right? Anything that you can think of, just say it out loud. You just listen to what they say and get feedback that way. It's a very good way of getting feedback. Because you are probably going to notice that a lot of people are going to be getting confused because we're not pointing them towards the right things, right? Very normal thing. And then we can go in and we can fix it. Cool. So you see, like in general, what I want to focus on first is our environment art needs to be functional first before it can be pretty, right? Because making something functional is more important to the game than making something look nice. So yeah, the suggestion of adding a sculpted rock could be good, but I would do that at the end. Could you only push for one focal point? Did you have secondary focal points or not? Yeah. You can actually have like a hierarchy of things, right? So for example, if you then were to, if we go with this, the overpaint here, right? Where is it? So is that this guy? No. It's this guy. Okay. So let's say we go with this guy again, right? Now the focus is towards the back. We can then start breaking it up into like multiple sections and say, okay, main focal point here. That's where we want people to watch. That's achieved, right? That's good. I now want to have like a little note or something like that here, right? Like, how do I then do that? We can again like put like a small like oil lamp or whatever you have like over here, right? And make like an additional focal point, but it needs to be less intense than the main focal point, right? And that's where we can establish like a hierarchy. So let's say this is our second point in the hierarchy. We can then go in and say, what am I doing? Am I dodging? Oh, I need to turn this to midtones probably. Oh no, I'm just doing the pixel layer. That's not what I want. Nacho's going bonkers behind me. Hold on, give me a sec. All right. So, where were we? Second focal point over here. And then we can start to increase like the amount of light that we want to kind of draw the attention there, right? This is obviously going to be way better. This is obviously going to be way better in engine, right? Because you can be way more specific. Because I wouldn't brighten up the whole thing. I would probably get like an accent light, you know, like a bright hotspot that kind of attracts you there. But that's the thing. Like you can really play with the lighting. Just think about it as you're not really thinking about, how should I explain this? You're not really thinking about like, you are purely thinking about things in like an artistic fundamental level, right? So that is like, oh, I want people to look here. So that's going to be my brightest value. I want people to look here secondary. I want there to be like a little hotspot. You then add like a little bit of extra intensity there, right? Because we're not thinking about like, oh, I should use these assets or I should use like this amount of light or something like that. It's more focusing on the art fundamentals of it. And now we're focusing on lighting, right? But there are so many ways to make this feasible, right? Because there's so many clever ways that you can lead a person into a room first by pulling them in, and then as they rotate, it reveals like a side corridor, just because they hadn't seen that yet. There's so many cool things that you can do in games. Cool. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Let me add a couple more notes before we move on to the next person. There's also another way, by the way, like another good tip. I think I'm gonna bring that up here. No, who was it? Can't remember. We're probably gonna have I think it was Jack of Diamonds. Yeah. This is also another tip. I'm kind of skipping ahead. I'll tell more about this tip like in a little bit. Making small little thumbnails also helps you figure out what you need to do, right? So there's blurring the image, there's turning it to black and white, there's squinting your eyes, that also helps. Literally taking distance away also helps. Or just turning it to like small thumbnails helps you focus on the small things rather than the immediate thing that you see in front of you, right? So a bunch of good tips to just kind of get you to focus on the bigger picture rather than the individual details within the image. Because this read is more important than like this zoomed in read most of the time. Okay, let's go back to Vidar. So yeah, hope that was helpful. One last thing that I'll add here is one of the notes that we talked about is focus on gameplay first. I'll just call it gameplay first. I've been making a test post on ArtStation and judging it by the ArtStation thumbnail. Yeah, that can also be good. The test that you're doing with that is how it compares to the rest of other people's work though. So what you're doing there is fundamentally different than turning it to black and white, for example, right? Because when you're doing that comparison test with the thumbnails on ArtStation, you are specifically looking how your work stands out between other things. I recommend to do that at the end of a project because you don't want to do that in the beginning because then you're going to skew it to like what everyone else is doing. And I think you should be doing what you want to do until you can then put like the final details into the presentation by oh, just the size on the page. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Yeah, I just want to make sure that people don't start comparing themselves with like a bunch of stuff on ArtStation to then stand out. Because that's a dangerous road to go down to. Cool. Oh, shit. I closed the wrong one. No! Let's see. I think I closed Neo Imagination one. Cool. So let's open that. And thank you, Vidar, for sharing your work. I appreciate it. I get right on it. Let's go. Next up is Darpan. Darpan, I don't think you're in the list though. Oh no, you are. Oh my god. Yeah. Sorry, confused about the names. You are. I need to change this up because the names keep switching around constantly. Yeah, there we go. Okay, Darpan, let's have a look. I really appreciate your advice. What kind of props or details could help feel the space more lived in? I want to show that people stayed there for a while, but had to leave quickly and without warning. Okay. I am not going to tell you what assets you need to be making. I want you to use the approach that I always use, and it's thinking about the story, right? So you've done a little bit of storytelling already, but I want you to really think about why did these people stay here? And why did they have to leave without a warning, right? I think the first question is probably going to be way more impactful. Why did people have to take shelter in this place in the first place, right? Why are they not just at home? What is happening here? Think about that, right? Because that is already going to give you a lot of information, right? If it is something like COVID, right? Something that has like a pretty long buildup and you can kind of see coming, you can prepare for this, which means that you have a bunch more personalized assets or personalized props because people can take their stuff with them, right? If it's immediate, people don't have that time, which means that you're going to have less props that people have taken with them, right? Personal belongings. Then you can also think about like, why this location, right? Was this location supposed to be a public shelter? Maybe it got turned into like a first aid station. What is the story around this location specifically, and why are people flooding here, right? And then the second part is they had to leave quickly and without warning. I think that's honestly more optional. I think if you can nail the first part of the story, you're already going to be in such a good position. So yeah, I would really focus on asking yourself like a lot of why questions. Basically ask like the five W's, right? I keep forgetting what they are. Like I need to honestly turn this into like a thing that I always say. Why? Who? What? When? And where, right? These questions, the 5 W's, ask a bunch of those questions. Okay, who was here? Why were they here? What were they doing here? You know, where would they go? They're going here. What was the purpose of this location? You know, when did this happen? I mean, when did this happen is already established somewhat because you have like a semi-modern looking like place, right? So that's already kind of established by the architecture. But those questions, like, use them, you know? Because honestly, I think this exercise is probably the most important thing that I can teach you. Just ask those questions, right? And dig deep, right? Like you're talking about people staying here for a while, right? That's very broad. That doesn't really give me anything to latch onto, right? Darpan is saying, so I already figured it out. Some kind of interwar happened and all fled here to safety. Still too broad. Interwar with who? Right? So what happened is, okay, some sort of interwar happened. Some kind of interwar. Like I don't think, stay away from some kind in your storytelling. Try to make it more concrete, right? I'm trying to get at least a little bit of concrete grip of what happened here, right? So let's say there's an interwar happening with, let's say there's an interwar happening. This is for example, I don't know what the architecture is like. I don't know what you're basing it on, right? Let's see. It looks very American to me. Okay, let's go Cold War era, right? The interwar, like World War III broke out back when it was like the Cold War era. And people had to take shelter in these like bunkers, right? Like very hastily constructed, like little bunkers turned, well, metro stations turned into bunkers kind of thing, right? It's more like a Division Story 2 line. Something, yeah, you can literally make it whatever you want, right? It could literally be a war with fucking aliens if you wanted to. You could make it whatever you want, right? But the thing is, if you make it more concrete, like for example, if you're doing something where like Russia is the enemy, the props and the assets that you're going to be building for the scene are going to be completely different compared to a Russian invasion, an alien invasion, right? So that's why I want you to focus on the story, because it's going to drastically change what you're going to be making. And then think about, you know, why are people taking shelter? You know, is it against like a nuclear attack? Is it against like conventional attacks? Like, what is happening here? And then think about like what you want to build as assets around that scene, right? If it is nuclear, there's probably going to be flyers and people preparing like, what's that called? Like yodium pills, right? That help you temporarily, like that. I think they shelter your kidneys from like radiation sickness or something like that. You know, look up some stuff, see what you can find, and build. Can you explain how it differs in props? So for example, this example that I'm giving now, right? If during the Cold War, like a lot of propaganda material and a lot of preparation material against nuclear weapons was handed out to the public, right? So that was a way to like indicate that the Cold War is happening, because people were afraid of nuclear fallout and nuclear bombs and all that kind of stuff happening, right? Whereas if it is an alien invasion, the thing is probably going to be like way different, right? Like you could have like newspaper clippings, probably less personal items because it happened all of a sudden. Maybe the impact of the aliens is going to be felt at the entrance, right? Maybe there's literally like, I'm thinking War of the World style, where it's like giant robots. Maybe one of them is literally collapsed onto the entrance. Be cool stuff, right? This is what I mean. Whatever story you come up with, you can then take that into the next stage by just asking yourself why. Or why, or what, or when, you know? Like all those questions are going to help a lot. And do a ton of research, right? Because let's say even the when question, right? Like 1960s Cold War era, something like that, has a very different feel towards like compared to like the modern era, right? And do a bunch of lookup, right? Like try to make it as specific as possible, right? Even when you look at the Division 2, right? Division 2, very specific, right? Like it is Christmas. No, Division, I'm thinking Division 1. Let's go with Division 1, for example. Christmas time, a plague breaks out, but you can still see Christmas in the air, right? And the reason why I think they picked it, and it's obviously set in like New York, right? Like Manhattan, like very iconic locations, very recognizable during Christmas, even more recognizable. And I think what is also striking there is they picked that for a reason because it adds such a stark contrast, right? And it's the whole idea of everyone's getting sick, but also everyone really wants to be together, you know, because they want to share Christmas together. And it's like this holiday where like people come together, right? And the contrast with then it being like a massive outbreak and there's no one on the streets. That is a really cool contrast, you know? Remember when I talked about contrast like just a couple of minutes ago? One of those use cases. Cool. So think about those questions, because those questions are going to be the key to everything. I think the most important question for you to ask is, why did people flee to this place in the first place, right? What was it about this place that made them flee there rather than go anywhere else? Because that's going to give you an indication of what this place is supposed to be. Cool. Yeah. Hope that was helpful. Thank you. And good stuff. This is more, that was like an exercise in, what is that called? Like you can teach a man to fish. That whole saying, right? Like you can give a fish to a man. Oh my god, I'm gonna butcher this so bad. But anyway, it comes down to like what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you all the tools so that you can build your own environments, right? Rather than me giving you all the assets that you need to build, because that isn't really teaching you the underlying ways how to get to those assets in the first place. Right. Let's move on to the next person. Next person is Jack of Diamonds. So Jack of Diamonds here, we already looked at your work in just a minute. I think this one is going to be pretty short because you were basically just asking about which one do we pick, right? And I think the answer is probably going to be short. But you said you made changes related to the textures and put together 3 different character placement variations. Personally, I like the variation where they're standing in front of the crypt the most. What do you think? So this one, or this one. I 100% agree. This one is way more interesting. And the way that I think about this is we are now separating the characters out into their own little space rather than merging them with something that has the same kind of colors. Thank you, Sadie. I appreciate that. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Exactly. I kind of ended up as like that news anchor, you know, that completely butchered that. like live on live on television. But no, I think this is by far like the best. And I wanted to highlight that with the little example that I have below, right? That's the whole reason why that is there. You had to Google it? Well, I appreciate you being honest about it, you know? And saving me to Google. Yeah, this is the best version. And the reason is why, like, look at these thumbnails. Like, if you really look at these thumbnails, right? And I'm keeping them at a distance on purpose, is because in number two and 3, you can't even see that there's characters in there, or there's not even a separation between where the characters are standing. It just like flows together with the entrance, and that's not what we want. So I think again, if we're looking at it from this perspective, if you want the characters to stand out by themselves, you would need to kill the light inside of the cave, and then maybe that gives the opportunity for the character to stand out, right? That could be an option if you want to use number 2 or 3. But even in this, you can kind of see that there's like a little pop of orange here that is just like creating a little island for those people to stand apart from the rest. I think what could be useful is trying to balance the light a bit more. What that means is these two, probably want to turn them down. Maybe even turning down this one as well. Because again, we want to shift the focus from the characters first and then into the cave second, right? So if we can shift the contrast just a little bit, and again, we can have a look at this, do a quick exercise. So if you rasterize, we do the same sort of tricks here again, right? Again, this is going to look way better in engine. But as a quick exercise, it's always fun. Might be a bit too much. This stuff needs to be like pretty subtle, right? Move my overpaint. You can see even from like a distance. It's like slightly shifting that balance, you know? That's all that we need. Cool. Yeah, I want to shift the balance here slightly. I think that's going to be great. But again, keep it very subtle. You know, I think the statues are the main issue, and then the cave itself, I'm okay with that sort of being at like the same intensity, right? Because then we create like an immediate bond between like the characters and then the environment behind it. Rest of it in the scene though, like all the upgrades to the textures are looking quite nice. Love it. Love to see it. So yeah, good shit. Yeah, good stuff. Nice. Thank you for sharing this. Always fun to see this scene. It's coming along really nicely. Really happy to see it like coming together. So great stuff, Jack. Yep. Cool. And then who was next in the list? I think that was it. Okay, so we are just going to be blasting through. Let me pick a new music though. Thank you. No worries. Right, and we're just gonna go through the list. So, Hjalmar, I have not looked at what you want feedback on just yet, so let me have a look. A cursed hut. There we go. Tweak the moss and the water. Use some decals to blend the moss on the roofs, but I think I want to make an atlas to be able to blend it a bit more and create more fuzziness. This is how I planned the atlas so far, and added some lily pads and stuff to the water. It's something you think I should do. Oh, I see. That's the way that you want to break it up. So you have moss trims, lily pads. I'm not sure how you want to approach the moss. Are these going to be like cards that you're going to add on top of it? Not that I'm opposed to it, but I don't think this is going to work as a. Wait, let me see. Use some decals, but I want to make an atlas. I'm assuming that that's going to be like little meshes, which could look cool. The only thing that I would do here, and this is just good common practice, is whenever you're doing like a different material, I would also separate them out. Separate lily pads. Just because that gives you way more flexibility into the future. Because if, let's say, your next project needs lily pads, then you don't need to fuck around with like trying to cut them out and reorganize and all that kind of stuff. It just makes it way easier. Also, in terms of like production sense, right? If you then only use a place where you only have lily pads, you're still pulling in like 80% of the rest of the texture that is not even going to be used, right? So I would try to split them up as much as possible, where they are going to be used in the same location and in the same spot. So yeah, split out the lily pads. The rest of it can all go on the same moss trim and just make a couple more moss cards. I think you're going to be fine. Moss texture. Is looking good. Cool, let's have a look. Added some lily pads. Stuff for the water. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean with like stuff for the water. I would separate all that stuff out. So even if you have like random stuff for the water, I think that's fine. Just keep it on like one texture atlas, right? I think that's fine. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's about it. I will also combine this with like the previous overpaint from like last week. Yeah, keep working on that blending. Keep making it look as good as you can. Yeah, cool stuff. Yeah, and I still need to add like the texture suggestions, right? With like additional water, additional roughness variation from last week. So I'll do that as well. Cool. But thank you. Thank you, Hjalmar. I appreciate it. Next up, we have Umbrella. Umbrella is continuing to work on their little restaurant in the corner. With Wednesday question is just like general feedback. Cool. Okay, so a couple of things that I noticed. This is your latest screenshot over here, right? And I do like what is happening, but I honestly think that you have like an opportunity here that just like aligns with what you were doing already perfectly fine. Because you're kind of playing around with like the buildings and the structure and all that kind of stuff, right? I think honestly, if you're thinking about like making a restaurant, right? What I always imagined is that this was like a dingy, like a speakeasy, right? Like an illegal kind of restaurant. what I mean by that is, and especially this shot, like you have such a beautiful framing already. I would honestly just make this the entrance to like the restaurant. Add like, I don't know, a sign here. I don't know, we talked about this stuff before, right? But this seems to be, this has like all the elements that you would probably want. The only thing that you need to do is just make this the entrance to like the restaurant, and then you're good, because you have the focus of the lighting already coming in. The scene itself, it has like lots of interesting ways of connecting like all the buildings, and it adds like a nice natural vignette already. And you kind of get those like back alley vibes, right? Of course, it's up to you, right? You decide. But I just saw this shot and I was like, oh my god, this is like perfect. Like, this is a great place to then start building additional content around, right? Whereas here, it becomes already harder to define like where you want us to look, right? Because even in this shot, it seems like this seems to be like dead, you know? I mean, there's nothing really pulling our attention in, and it kind of feels just like a normal back alley, right? Just with the lighting and the way that it's set up. Plus, if you then wanna make this look like really nice, that's honestly going to be a lot of work, because these are going to be like glass panels that you can see into, right? Unless you're going to make them boarded up or something like that. But I think, or my assumption would be, that you are adding like glass in those windows, and then you have to do the interior and all that kind of stuff too, right? Which is a lot of work potentially. Well, I'll say it could be a lot of work. Won't the lighting make it too on the nose? I don't think there is necessarily something as like too on the nose. I mean, yeah, I mean there might be, but I don't think it's bad to just have like this sort of framing going on. I think there's something beautiful about it. Because also the thing that is going to happen in this scene, the stronger the focal point is already, it gives you like a really solid base to then add additional, additional things on top of, right? Because what I'm trying to already foresee is these are the current iteration of this scene are basic textures. There's not too much in terms of like modeling and all that kind of stuff. So if all that noise comes in, it's going to be distracting. So we need a strong focal point to already exist. And then maybe if it's still too on the nose, like down the line, it's an easy tweak by just like reducing the sun intensity, right? So that is like way easier than trying to go for something like this, where you don't really have a solid focal point already, and you have to do a lot of iteration to kind of get it to the same space, right? So it's better to start from something like this, solid foundation, and then start adding things on top of it. Because yeah, I mean, we talked about it in the earlier piece, right? Like your focal point and your lighting, especially if you want to draw the attention of the player, should be most of the time is aligned, right? Because that's one of the best tools that we have to guide the player somewhere. And if you have a scene that naturally does that, it makes total sense for me to kind of build something around this. The way that I look at this scene, it's almost like a happy accident that happened. Like you're just playing around with the lights, and then I can almost guarantee you that the person behind the scene, Umbrella, was just like, oh, this kind of feels nice. Maybe not really knowing why, or maybe not being able to explain it, right? But there is something nice about the scene already. And then building something around that sets you up for success. That's the way that I look at it, because there's a lot of moments where I'm just like playing around with stuff and I'm like, ooh, this could be nice. And then I just lean in and see if it actually is nice. And if it is, I'll just go all the way, you know? Yeah, but I like the vibes. I like how closed off it is. I like the way that you've used the scaffolding and all that kind of stuff. It feels claustrophobic, and it feels nice in the best way possible. So I think that this iteration would be my pick. Cool. Because yeah, there are some concerns here. Like, you can make it work, right? Like, you can board up the windows and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, have like natural beauty going on with this one. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Umbrella. I hope that was helpful. I know that was like an earlier iteration. But you tried the feedback and I'm happy now. This is going to turn into much higher quality. Yes. That's what we're doing this for, right? Scope down to allow you to really, really focus on like bringing out high quality stuff. Right. Next up, we got Kurt Roman building a treehouse. My question is, the scene has no concept art at its base, only a current mood board, and I'm doing the blockout phase, concentrating on the elements for the scene while trying to land on a style direction. Okay. In doing so, I will iterate on the props and try to land the shape language, color, value, and atmosphere of the scene. Okay, that is interesting because you've already made like the most important asset in your scene in a certain style with certain shapes already, right? So that is interesting. The scene depicts a treehouse where 5 children play, while a girl who's never outside her home can only observe from the outside, but never participate in play. Question is based around the approach to land all these things, and how I should think about it. The technical aspects, as in how I approach it with the textures, I don't want to think too much at this stage. At least that's my thinking. The mood and the style is my concern. Okay. Cool. I think when you are building the mood and the style, right? Like when you're doing that initial part of the research, we need to have way more stuff going on here. And what I mean by that is we need to be very specific with these images and what we want from them. I'm testing out some at this stage, but I get hung up on the style. Yeah, that is because like even if you look at this, a lot of this stuff is like pretty wild in like style variation, right? You've got something that is like pretty Disney-esque and like pretty simplistic in the way that is dealing with shapes and forms and details and all that kind of stuff. Then you have something like that, which leans more into like the realistic realm. And then you have something like that, which goes more into like the semi-stylized kind of realm, you know, like Overwatchy kind of stuff. Yeah. It contrasts because I can't decide how painterly or how realistic I want it. Yeah, and that's where, so there's two ways of going about this, right? So if we're talking about style, option 1, and this is a cheap option, research. Way more research. And be very specific with what you want, right? I would honestly recommend, if you're going to go for a style and you want to use a pre-existing style from a game or something like that, pick one game. One game only. That's it. We're not blending multiple styles from multiple games. No, too muddy. Just pick one game. That's how you're going to go for, and really go after like what makes that style, right? Because yeah, otherwise it's going to get too muddy, and you have to be like really specific, right? Like, so one game as an example, or you know, one artist or whatever. Like if you have one thing to focus on, that's already going to be way better, right? It gives you like a smaller focal, a smaller focal point, like a smaller focus. I'm trying to get away from that and internalize style better, since this is from my book. Probably a too wide net. Yeah, I mean, you can internalize a style, right, by like breaking things down still, right? So even if you, let's say, you go for an Overwatch style, what makes Overwatch Overwatch? What kind of shapes do they use? What kind of colors do they use? How do they use the colors? How do they use contrast in their colors? How do they use contrast in like their shapes? Like you can really go deep in like all of this stuff, right? And that is, even if you just look at Overwatch, look at different breakdowns from like different artists and see, even on different maps, what is the consistent thing between those maps, right? Um, and really try to break that down and then try to like replicate that in your work. Again, Overwatch has an example, but you can apply this to anything, right? Because there can be very specific things with very specific work, right? Like for example, in this one, I mean, it is pretty blurry, and that's probably my bad. But if you focus on the bigger elements, you can kind of see that, for example, the lighting is very moody, right? It's very, it uses like soft contrast, but it does something to the mood. It like elevates it. It uses atmospheric effects very strongly, right? Very like a lot of focus on like atmospheric depth. And try to do those breakdowns for like whatever you do, or like if you're trying to replicate a style. Now, the other thing that I was going to bring up, first thing is research, right? Sometimes research feels too nebulous for us as artists, probably including myself. So what you can then do is do step one, and then once you've done a bit of research, build a benchmark. A benchmark should be quick to iterate on, especially when you're doing exploration. And it needs to contain a variation of surfaces. So what I mean by that is, if you use the tree as a benchmark, what is going to be an issue is that the tree is like pretty good at like trying to simulate like natural stuff in your scene, right? Which is helpful. But if you're then trying to do like something metal or something man-made, you don't know what that is going to look like because you've only done a natural thing, like a natural asset in your scene, right? So try to find something, or I don't know, it could be like two things or something that gives you the opportunity to build a benchmark around, and then try to go to that really quickly, right? And that could literally be, okay, I'm going to take a simple barrel. How can I then turn that into the style that I want, right? What do I need to do to the shape of the barrel to kind of push it more towards Overwatch rather than it just being like a simple barrel, right? What can I do to the texturing to then push myself into being closer aligned to what Overwatch does with their textures, right? Because yeah, this is pure theory, right? And I always struggle with this. I always need to get hands-on. So I do a little bit of theory, let's say 20% research, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna grab a simple thing. If I just want to test a texture, for example, I'll just bash one together on a plane, and I'll try to get a feel for what I like texturing-wise. The thing that you don't necessarily want to do is you don't want to dive into your actual production for your assets yet, because you're just going to waste a bunch of time. The hut is too big, the tree is too big, it just takes too much time, right? You want something that is like super small, that is easy to iterate on. Because let's say, hey, I don't like the shapes of like the planks. Now I need to redo the whole hut, you know? I would literally try to strip it down to something simple. If let's say, you know that you're going to do the hut regardless, make a single plank. What does a single plank look like in the style that you want to go for? And once you got a single plank, then you can do a hut, right? And then you already have like a baseline, let's say the tree, right? Because you're already doing stuff to that plank, let's say exaggerating some of the proportions, and maybe you're applying like a brush stroke effect onto the texturing that looks quite good. You can then take those elements and apply those to the tree as well. And this is pretty much aligned with what the industry does, right? That's why we have pre-production. We're literally talking about pre-production here, which is like, okay, what is going to be unique about like the game that we're building, and what is the kind of art style that we're going to be building, and how can I put that into like a rule set that then the bigger company or like all the artists in the company can follow, right? And that's usually get turned into like an art bible, and you get that on the first day, you get to internalize that, and then you get to live through those rules, right? Which is the art style. Yeah. But that's what I would say. If you're struggling with finding like the right shape language, what colors to use, how to do the values, always try to look for the simplest and quickest way to get those individual things out, and then bring it all together on like a prop, you know? So let's say the last example that I give is, for example, for colors, right? Take a plank, like do a quick sculpt. It doesn't have to be like a really in-depth sculpt, or you can take a base mesh from somewhere else that you just find, and then you just texture it, you know, see what you like. Because that is still going to be quicker than you having to do like a high poly, bake it down into a low poly, like sculpting in a ZBrush, like all that kind of stuff, to then test your textures. Just grab a mesh. Grab a mesh from somewhere and do the textures. So yeah, you want to test with already available resources, and then once you have done your testing, you can then bring it all together for your own stuff. And no one has to see those little test meshes or something like that. You just do that to just figure out the thing that you have, right? Or you want to make. As soon as you have it, you just throw it away and start working on the real shit. Yeah. I hope that was helpful. Let's see. Mood and style are my main concern. When it comes to the mood, honestly, go back to like number one here, like research. I honestly think that mood is pretty easy to define in just pictures, you know? The only thing that I will add to mood, don't focus on mood, focus on the emotion. And then let the mood come forward from the emotion, right? In this case, if you have this kid, and I'll say one other thing, like this kid that's jealous about people like playing outside in the tree hut, right? The prevailing mood is probably going to be sadness or like missing out, right? So how do you then turn that into colors that you can then use in your scene, right? Because you probably, the way that I'm thinking about this is, we see a kid looking outside the window to a tree hut where kids are playing, right? So there's like this physical barrier already. She's inside watching people like have fun outside, right? There's a physical barrier there already. What that also allows us to do is, you probably want to have like bright, vivid colors for the tree hut because they're having fun, you know? So you're playing with like vibrant, lush greens, and there's going to be a fun color on the tree house to make it stand out and all that kind of stuff. Then probably the colors that are going to be around like the window frame that we're looking through, they're probably going to be like cold, you know, because she's kind of sad that she can't participate. And that's usually the way that I go about thinking about the mood. It is emotion, or well, storytelling and emotion first, and then I build my colors around the emotions that I want to evoke. Right? Because you're not going to throw like warm, nice, fuzzy colors in the mix when you want to portray like a sad story, right? So that's hopefully helpful there. Because yeah, start with story, right? That's why I'm saying story is so important. Start with story. You've got a good story going on. I like it. Then we turn that into what is the main emotion that we want to evoke. And that becomes our mood, right? Mood of the piece. Especially those points on mood are important to me. Good feedback, and I'll work on that. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff, Kurt. Yeah. Have fun. Looks like a fun little project. I mean, it's not little. There are ways to condense it, right? But still, fun stuff. Right. We are probably going to speed this up just a little bit. Because I just realized that it's already 10. Time flies. Hulen is next. I'm ready to render and post, but I want to receive feedback on the building looking too much like a toy. So I would love to hear opinions if I can change and improve the look. Oh, there's actually one piece that I'm missing. Oh no, that's a reference. Okay. You got feedback that the building looks too much like a toy? Why is that? I think what might be the case here is that it is hard to compare the scale. That's the first thing, right? So what I would do is kind of open up this space and have like, I don't know, statues or grave marks or something like that here that we can immediately compare the two. Right? And that might help us a little bit as well. The second thing that I'm going to bring up, sometimes what doesn't help when it comes to scale comparisons is, yeah, Rizov in the chat is already alluding to it, is that we are almost floating. Well, we are floating, right? This is not, we're not looking at it like eye level, which also doesn't help. We need to ground the character so that we as a viewer can be grounded in the scene as well, right? I think that's why, I mean, this is probably too low of a camera angle, but that's probably why like the scale of this starts to look like nicer already, you know? So yeah. And I'm gonna bring this back to probably one of my favorite movies of all time, Pacific Rim. I love comparing Pacific Rim 1 versus Pacific Rim 2 because they did such a marvelous job of feeling like you were actually in the location, like an actual person in the movie in the first one. And in the second one, that's completely gone. One of the main reasons for that is that in the first one, they were really specific with where the camera was going to be. You'll notice that in almost all the shots in that movie, you are at eye level. You are actually at eye level as a person who would be walking around in that city. Even if they're doing like these really cool shots, you know, there's a lot of moments where you're like just standing on the rooftop of a building or like you're standing on a boat or something like that. They want to ground you in the world as much as possible, right? And ever since then, I was like, oh my God, yeah, makes so much sense. Because we are so used to seeing everything through just normal eyes, right? Like eye level. That's what we're used to. So that's what we gravitate towards. Let's see. Wooden is saying, I got told it looks fake, plastic-like, and the proportions didn't work. Yeah, I mean, always feel free to ask them, like, follow-ups, right? Hey, can you tell me why the proportions didn't work? That's, like, good stuff. Good stuff to ask. Because I'm trying to see what else I can see. And, yeah, I'm getting the feeling that something is off. Maybe there might be smaller things, but I don't think that they have such a big impact, because we always need to see what is the most recognizable thing for us as humans, right? Doorways, staircases, paths, all those things need to be at human size. So my initial thing that I was looking at is staircase. It might be just a tad too big. The other thing that I could also say is that the tiling here, like these tiles, also too big. I don't think this is an issue necessarily, or like not the main contributing factor to why the proportions feel wrong, but it could be a very subtle thing, right? I think the staircases, they're probably going to be a little bit more impactful to your scene. Because, yeah. Yeah, they do feel quite chunky, right? If we look at this doorway, for example, where let's say this is the height of you, those feel like chunky staircases. So maybe that could be a contributing factor. Yeah. Play around with it. Just break the scene for a little bit, scale them down, see if that looks better. Because yeah, sometimes, I'll tell you this, sometimes I'll have moments where I'm like, something isn't working. I can't figure out what. You know? Sometimes what you'll have to gravitate towards is just doing like very drastic measures. Where it's like, okay, something is not working. And then I'll go through like a mental list in my head, right? The list that you just heard me say. Like, what do we gravitate towards as human beings, right? Staircases, doorways, like all that kind of stuff. Okay, can I change some of those proportions to have them make more sense? And that's literally the thing that I would try. First thing. Yeah, give that a try. See what that looks like. Cool. But yeah, the camera perspective is also going to help a lot. And again, like you can have this camera perspective, right? And I think you can even see it here. The hill is kind of coming up to us, right? Which makes a lot of sense because now we're standing on a hill and it makes way more sense in my head as why we're so high up comparative to this church, right? But that's not happening here. It's flat. But yeah, cool. Hope that was helpful. A couple little tips here. Thank you, Koolin. Thank you for sharing your work. Next one we have Scapel working on control-inspired stuff. Looking pretty nice. Just some general feedback. I think most of the stuff that I actually pointed out is tiling of your textures. Like you can really see clearly like how this all tiles up, right? That is something that needs to be broken up. There are some simple geometric shapes, right? So for example, these guys here. That needs to be broken up just a little bit. And honestly, wherever you have just like a very sharp edge, give it a slight bevel. You know, maybe the resolution is not doing it justice, but that would be really nice to just have like a bevel on some of these surfaces. Yeah, you can kind of see it here, right? A bevel on those surfaces would be really nice. Basically doing this, right? Capturing like a little glint of that highlight. That's nice. Some other things is I'm going to be very picky about like all this concrete stuff because that is, if you're doing a control inspired environment, right? That is what you're asking for. You're asking people to focus on like a lot of concrete materials. So if they then don't really make sense, you're going to get scrutinized for them, right? That means that if you have seams like this, they're probably not going to be built that way, right? This is probably going to be like a singular concrete slab or something like that, instead of it being split down the middle. Again, nitpicky, but that is what the scene invites, right? Same thing here. Wherever you have a side panel coming up to a top panel, I want to see the scene continue. Honestly, you've done a pretty good job in the rest of the scene, but do a pass in the entire scene where that makes sense. And even, I would think that if you have like a small slab at the top, I would probably align the top of the slab with the top ridge, so that you have the smaller thing happening at the bottom. That, well, maybe not at the bottom. What I mean is, like, it is highly unlikely that this is constructed with like a small slab that they had to cut out, you know? Again, tiny stuff, but I think that actually helps the believability of the scene, right? And I'm curious how this works. Did I just like cut it out? Not sure. But yeah, and then I would also say the main focal point looks really nice. I would find a way to like highlight it or like have it stand out a little bit more from its surroundings, because I think this one looks quite nice, right? The framing of it does it justice, like there's a lot of cool stuff happening. But if you look at like the rest of the area, it kind of just like falls away a little bit, and I think you're trying to do something very subtle with like a highlight coming in here. Don't think it's enough. It's almost like, let's actually have a look if this works. Can we have like brighter lights inside or something like that? Let's actually have a look. Yeah, this is something that we'll have to balance in the engine. But you kind of want something to happen there, right? So that it just captures the eye just a little bit more. Where's this guy? This one, right? Okay. Yeah, like a fluorescent light from the top or something like that. That's just like lighting up the scene a little bit more. Just so that it stands out slightly more than it does currently. I think with Control, you very much go into like, either you come into a room and it's, either you go into a room and there's like big overhead lights, right? Like grabbing your attention, or you have to be pretty subtle with it. So yeah, I hope that helps. Mama said Emperor is saying, if I join your Discord, there will be tutorials. So you get, if you become a member, you get like a 250-page book with like a bunch of tips and tricks. So yes, that will be there, and we will be adding a whole suite of like lessons and tutorials and all that kind of stuff soon, but that won't be for the public soon, because we are building our own online academy. But that will take a little bit before we release that to the public. But who knows, because yeah, with contract stuff changing up, I'll be doing this stuff full time, so that leaves me some time to do other stuff too. So we're going to be exploring some new resources in the future for sure. Next up is Ilya. First of all, I noted great scene progress. I think you're doing a good job on the scene, iterating and making it better. So that's looking really, really nice. Your question was, how do I make tulips? Basically, right? Like, how do I make them look nice? For example, like the thing here. In general, whenever you're doing like small bits of foliage, you want to sculpt them flat. So you just, in this case, you make the individual tulip leaves. You just sculpt them as like flat leaves. Let's say if I were to give you like a way to sculpt, right? Like, think about, you're basically sculpting directly onto your UVs, right? So you have like a couple of leaves. Let's say 6 leaves. And then you have like the bigger leaves, like the you know, the leaves that are attached to the stem. And what I forgot to include is you want to have like a strip of like green stuff, because you can basically map the stem to this. So you basically try to make your flower into individual components, and this applies to like any sort of like small foliage. Try to look at the individual components, sculpt them separately, or like make them separately somehow, and then bake them down, texture them, and reassemble them as low poly. Because once you bake this down onto a plane, you can then start cutting out this into like little low poly shapes. Right, so let's say something like this, probably in the center, and that will be like your low poly. Right, and if you then do that for everything here, you can then like reassemble it. Mama said, why do you ask these questions? I'm genuinely curious, because every stream you come in here and you just say like a random name of a game and then how difficult. Okay, if you want to know how difficult something is to make, look at the development team behind it, right? Look at how big the environment team is for that game. And that should give you like an indication of how difficult it is. In general, any professional development is going to have like a full team of artists on it full time, right? If you want to go into that detail, you need a lot of time and a lot of skills and a lot of work to make that performant and looking really, really good. So, yeah. Do not underestimate the time and effort that it takes. I mean, you've been here in like multiple sessions, right? And you've seen people grow and develop their skills. You're almost seeing it live, right? As close to that as we get it. So, and you might have noticed that it takes a long time before you get somewhere. Okay. Next person, Eisendrag, is working on a small scene, but I think they're starting with a single asset to then start building from. Let me see, where's the thread? I think I lost it. Oh no, here we go. The main idea is to create a single prop to see my current level of my skills as a visual benchmark and to try and push every prop and asset past it. Okay. The main goal of the project is to further extend my experience in trim sheets, modern design, and optimization focused thinking related to AAA practices. I want to achieve clean textile density throughout the project, cinematic angles and lighting, high quality props and foliage to be entirely created from scratch, as well as experimenting with the structure for the first time. Okay, Yasin. That is a lot of stuff. That is a lot of stuff to do for your first environment. Even making destruction by itself is a lot of work. I think the way that you're approaching it by like isolating it into like a single prop is good. You don't need to make a whole environment. You don't need to. What is that logo behind the chat? That is a logo that that Yasin made for the project, I think. But yeah, I would say gut instinct. Again, I don't know what your skill level is, right? Go small. Something like this with like more details, you know, having like a little bit of destruction here and there, like breaking up like the wall behind it and stuff, is already good enough if you want to showcase something, right? Right. Cool. I would honestly, the last thing that I'll say is we're going to go through it again, right? Trim sheets, modern design, optimization, cinematic angles, lighting, high quality props, foliage, and destruction. You're doing 8 things. if you don't have experience in any of this, pick one. Pick just one. Please, do yourself a favor. Do yourself a favor, pick just one, make a really small project around it, and get really good at it way quicker than trying to do all 8 in a single scene, right? Now, I'm seeing that you can already do a little bit of prop modeling, right? Which is good. Love to see it. What I can also tell is that there are some issues already happening here where I don't know how you made this. I don't have any additional details, right? But there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the single asset already. It looks like there's no high to low poly bake, which can be fine depending on the workflow that you use. But that workflow usually then includes having to model additional details back into the asset and have bevels that are like built into geometry. So I would think about the workflow that you use. And for something like this, I would really advise you to go to like the high to low poly workflow and really get good at baking and trying to get the right normal map information onto the asset. I'm already seeing some normal map issues here. I don't know if this is one as well. Maybe that's like a lighting issue as well. But there's a lot of stuff to learn already on the single prop to get to like a good quality, right? So wrong normal map info. There's no bevels on this, which leads me to believe that you don't have a baked asset for this, so no high poly. Which in general then means that this prop is just not really made to be the highest quality that it can be currently. So that's what we need to focus on first, right? We need to focus on the proper workflows to get you to make like assets at like a high quality level. And then we can look into how to apply the same rules to foliage. So, a couple tips here. Go small and focus on quality, right? Step 2 is focus on workflow. Like really try to get to grips with understanding the workflow that we use, right? So high to low poly. That's where I would begin. And start there. High to low poly, and then, look at those additional things. Number 3, focus on one skill at a time. For any project, to make it really simple, one project, one skill. One project, one skill. If you're doing a new project, focus on one skill that you want to improve. 8 skills to improve is too much. And sure, it can happen that like you're focusing the majority of your time on like, let's say high to low poly modeling, and then you also want to get a little bit better at like lighting too. That's fine. But don't go all in and say like, oh, I want to create a structure and I want to create foliage from scratch and I want to create like high quality props and like all that kind of stuff. A high quality prop by itself is a project by itself. Look at it that way. But yeah. Great stuff. Keep it up. And yeah, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to ask them in the chats. McFall is asking, have you played the new Forza yet? It's really fun. No, I have not. I probably won't touch that for like ages. It looks really fun, and I want to play it. It's just, yeah, neither time nor money at this point. So, yeah, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. How much time have you spent already? Sorry, I just wanted to learn all the doubts I need, and there's no suitable sources on YouTube. I'm looking forward to your courses. I mean, there are good, I don't know specific ones to shout out, honestly, but there must be good YouTube sources. I mean, there's like industry professionals now making like full YouTube tutorials. Yuchu is one that I constantly shout out. He's been working with us for like multiple things already. He's really good. Peyton Varney as well. He doesn't do that many tutorials, I think. Like he had like a bunch of tutorials that are really good. does really good stuff. But yeah, there are people out there, industry professionals that are doing really good stuff. So look them out. Look them up. Cool. Safran, let's have a look at your work. More lighting pane. Yeah, let's talk about lighting for a second. We talked about lighting a lot already, so I'm gonna skip through some of the suggestions, right? Because you can see that I kind of applied the same thing, blurring the image, finding out where the focus is gonna be. In this example, though, I think what is more important is that you have the reference at the bottom, right? And you can see it is warm colors that are surrounded by cold colors, right? So if I turn on my overpaint, you can kind of see we have this section of warm colors happening here. And then it's surrounded by cool colors, right? Color contrast helps us focus on the place where you want to focus, right? And the warm spot in the scene also is the brightest in the scene as well, right? Now, if we compare that to your scene, you can kind of see that it gets like a little bit muddy, right? You have like purple here, there's blue here, there's red, and there's like orange happening here, there's yellow and orange happening here. I want to highlight that having that consistency and like continuation between like warm and cold colors can really help you create like focus to where you want people to be looking, right? And this also highlights something. You have like your focal point up here, right? Because this is the brightest area that we see, which can work. Oh, let me erase that. Which can work. However, what you've then done is you've added characters in the area where everything is blending together, right? So you're asking me to look up. Like you're asking me with lighting to look up, but your storytelling is happening down at the bottom of the staircase, right? Those two things are working against each other. We need to unionize them. And if you then have characters doing like a secretive deal, put them at the top of the staircase, right? You can kind of see that is what's happening here, right? Like you can kind of see that it's trying to push you up to the staircase, and there's like people happening and like walking around and all that kind of stuff there. So that's where your interest is going to go naturally, because stuff is happening there too. Right. So yeah, as I said in the previous section of the feedback, think about your values as well. We talked about it briefly here. Your focal point is going to be going up because that's where you have the most the most intensity of your values, right? So you're drawing my eye up there, and then there's nothing to really show, right? Also be careful about stuff like this, right? Like random spotches, like random values here, they can be distracting too. Cool. Thank you, Safran. I hope that was helpful. Now we're going to keep moving on. Keep blasting through. So we have Vanessa. I realized that we always talk about your work at the end of the session. Let's see. In the wood plank material, I added desaturation, color, etc. as in the screenshots. Okay, so that's what we're seeing here. My next step would be to add a vertex paint to add variation or dirt, or should I be doing this in my material first or substance painter? I'm just a bit new to materials, so I'm a bit confused. Let me read that again. So should I be doing vertex painting first to add variation and dirt? Or should I be doing this in my material first? Oh, I see. No. I think in this case, what you want to be doing is you just create like another tileable texture, right? So you're basically saying, okay, I have... This is my tileable number 1, which is going to be my wall, right? And then you have tileable number 2, which is going to be your dirt. And then through vertex painting, you can go in and you say like, oh, I want to have like dirt all under here, right? So that's what I would do with vertex painting. And I think that's a good way of going about it too. Because yeah, The issue is if you build in very specific information into your base tileable, right? So into your wall, that means that it's going to show up everywhere equally, right? So if you want to, let's say if this is a dirty house and all of your houses are going to be dirty, I would build that into the base material, right? So your base textures. However, if you want to have the flexibility of having like a clean house and a dirty house, or you want to have like a clean side of the house and a dirty side of the house, that's where we need to then add that in layers, right? So that we have flexibility in how we apply it. So yeah, vertex paint is a good shout. That gives you the flexibility. I personally love vertex paint. It's such versatile, like old school stuff that I love. So yeah, good stuff. A bit new to materials. That's all good. I know that materials at first are like really confusing. So you're doing good stuff. Roughness, normal. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Good stuff, Vanessa. We have Nautila asking about wood plank feedback. There's only a couple of things that I could really say because you already have some like really good stuff going on. Like the roughness variation that you have already, especially from the screenshot. Looks quite nice. Love to see that. However, if you look at the bigger picture, one of the things that I immediately noticed is just seeing the streaks of the wood continuing all the way through, right? So that is something that we have to make a little bit more subtle so that it doesn't become like very noticeable, right? That's the first thing that I noticed. This directional kind of grain going across like multiple planks and being very recognizable, right? That is something where you can grab your, I don't know, the pattern that you already have and reduce it on certain planks and bring it out on other planks, right? To create that variation. The other thing that I would also say is that you have height variation in your planks too, which looks good. I'm a fan of like what's happening here. It kind of adds to like the abandoned kind of vibes and gives it like a little bit of like, yeah, texture in the height, right? What I would do though is I would use sections like this to indicate that it's broken, right? So I would basically have a variation of maybe exaggerating like slightly more, but like the planks are like kind of coming up a little bit. And then you just have a variation where the height is less so that we have the flexibility of painting between the two and that you can create like sections that are like slightly damaged or like coming apart just a little bit, right? Because I think this looks nice for indicating that it is partially destroyed. But I think for a base wooden plank floor, we need to be a little bit more subtle with the height variation. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, really nice already. Love what you're doing with it. And especially like these lower angles, like the details, starting to look like really, really nice. So good stuff. Love it. 10 to 15 hours, got it on Game Pass for now at least. Yeah. Yeah. It's been a while since I had a Game Pass. Mama said Emperor saying Thiago Klavska's course you said is good, but I hope he uses Blender. Yeah, I don't know if he uses Blender. I have no idea. I have no idea. Yeah, even if he doesn't use Blender, like you can still learn a lot of just like the general workflow and the way that he approaches the work and all that kind of stuff, right? Because I mean, pressing like buttons in Blender is just the same as in Maya. They're just like in a different location, right? Because I think for the stuff that he does, he's not going to use like anything like Blender or like Maya specific. Samara saying he uses Maya. Yeah, I don't think. Sure, he might use like gesture menus, right? But like the thought process of like, you know, extruding, beveling, I don't know, that kind of stuff is going to remain the same no matter what you do. Because yeah, in that case, it might be good to try like beginner tutorials to get to a good place with modeling in Blender, and then pick up like the course from Thiago Klavka, let's say, and then apply what you've learned from Blender to his Maya courses then. Because I'm sure that the rest of it, like the general thinking about like how you approach creating an environment and all that kind of stuff is really, really good. Right, last two for today. So Alessandro is working on this massive boat and is asking me a couple of questions about optimization. So the question is it optimized enough for a level, and am I also going in the right directions in terms of surface detail? Two questions, sneaky. I think I'm going to skip the optimization. There's one thing that I want to say about it is you're talking about like 24 pixels per centimeter, which is like 2,400 pixels per meter, right? It's not that that's bad. I think it is a lot for a big asset like this, right? Because if you think about like most games these days, I would say that there's somewhere between like 1K and 2K per meter. So you are already over like the high estimate, right? For example, there was an interesting discussion happening in our community talking about Crimson Desert. They use 1K per meter across the entire game. And I think none of the textures are even bigger than 1K. So, yeah. Just to give you an idea of what actual production textile density looks like, right? Usually it's going to be around like 1K. So if you want to be more optimized, like pull this down to like 1K. Or 10.24 pixels per centimeter. Then a couple of things to note. So you're going to be using decals and all that kind of stuff for like all the riveting detail, which is cool. What I would also think about is how would you add more detailed information? Like what I mean by example is, for example, here, the contextual dirt that you normally see when like two surfaces interact, right? Like how are you going to add that? Because that is going to be a lot of work if you don't find like a workflow appropriate way to do this, right? It could be done in many ways. You could bake like RGB masks for all this stuff out, right? Since you are using like a lot of instances of all the cannons and all that kind of stuff, and then maybe have split up the mainframe of the boat into like multiple RGB masks. I mean, you're gonna have to split it up regardless, I think. But that might be something to look into. Or find some like procedural stuff that you can do, right? Like on the material as well. That is probably going to be more costly to your material cost itself, but I think in this case it might be worth it. And then also watch out for like these sharp edges, right? These sharp edges are usually like a dead giveaway. We try to avoid them as much as we can. I know that you talked about optimization now, but give these edges like a slight bevel. Like a simple bevel plus weighted normals can help a lot. Yeah, but like the decals that you have here are like nice for water, but we need to think about like how dirt interacts and like all that kind of stuff too. And as a bonus point, if you can find a way to then have that interact with like the rivets on the decals and all that kind of stuff, that would be awesome. You know, that would be freaking awesome. Because yeah, we are gonna have to do a lot of work in like breaking up like the materials even more than we're doing now. Because I think what you're doing now is good. We're getting a lot of general breakup, which is really nice. But yeah, we are gonna need a lot more if we're gonna do it like across the board, right? Cool. Yeah, the good stuff though. I love the overpaints and the breakdowns and all that kind of stuff that you provide too. So really appreciate that. So yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I mean, going in the right direction is just you got to keep pushing the details, right? Especially the textual details. I think that's going to be the standout thing here. It's just how can you get that like material quality up? What might also help is, I don't know if you can see it here, actually. I wonder if it's worth it to do like per instance, like variation, like very slight variation, that like the tower itself is like older, so it has like more discoloration compared to some of the cannons who have recently been replaced. So to get like a little slight variation between those two. But yeah. Cool. Thanks, Alessandro. Keep up the great work. Then last for today, we have Frosty Fox. I think we missed you last week because of the tag. Yeah. You had a couple of questions. We limited to one question this session, though. I mean, every session we're limited to one question. So I'm just going to pick one. Let's see. Let me read through all of them first. For the stacked and bark log pieces on the left side of the house, would it be better to make them as a unique prop or use seamless textures? Prefer the way to approach here. For the doors and the windows, would it be okay to use a texture and trim? I'm a bit confused about this plank piece. Number 3. Where's that? A plank piece. Let's see. Doors and the windows, texture atlas and trim sheet. Let's see. The details look unique and higher compared to the other planks. Would it be better to create this as a unique prop, or should I include it in the trim sheet workflow? Okay, let's blast through those questions quickly because they're like related to each other, right? So, number 1, I would make those unique. I mean, you can get away with like a tileable texture and like cutting them up that way. Let me see. Can we have reuse somewhere? Okay, no, we can actually reuse some stuff here. So, number 1, we want to reuse this from a building. The only thing that is new, the only thing that would be a new asset would be the bark. Because as you can see, like the core of the timber, we already have that here, right? So I would just like reuse that over here. And then the bark is literally going to be like a new tileable texture, whatever you want to do. And try to get away with just like adding like cut geometry in there. Because it's going to be like logs at the side of like the house. I don't know. Like it needs a little bit of detail, but it doesn't need to have like a unique texture, in my opinion. Cool. Number 2 is the door. The question there is, would it be okay to use a texture atlas and trim sheet? I would use a trim sheet there probably. Looks like you can get away with a lot of stuff. And combining that with number 2 and 3. So I would honestly use a trim sheet / tileable for all the wood. So that means the core of the door would probably also be a tileable. And then the rest of it, all these like additional things that you add on top of it, that's all going to be trim sheet work. That's what I would do. So that's going to be a trim. And then the rest of it is going to be tileable. Which then means if we're doing the backing of the door with that wood, I would honestly also just use the same sort of methodology on this. And there's like a couple of extra sections where in here there's some like wooden elements. In here there will probably also be some wood elements. Anywhere where you can see like exposed wood, just use a tileable. That is probably, and you have like some wood here, right? So like all this kind of stuff. It's just going to be same thing. Same thing. I will say, I will say, one thing that I'm thinking about and have been debating for a while now. I think the quality of like old school trim sheets is currently being replaced by like geometry trim sheets, or like how can I make this clear? Like a trim sheet before was going to be flat regardless, right? And then you would kind of add like geometry to it to kind of give it like a volume again. I think we're getting to a point where if you make a kit like this for like a wooden house, I am very tempted to just make it as like a reusable kit almost. As in, like, I'll try to strip it into like modular pieces as much as possible, right? And instead of doing a trim sheet, I would probably do it unique, but make a kit out of it. So instead of using a traditional trim sheet, because there's multiple ways of approaching this even. Like, yeah, that's why I'm trying to explain this Metal Gear. The reason why I say geometry trim sheet is because the way that I would do it is you can still make a trim sheet and then use the height data of that baked down trim sheet to then displace geometry so that you actually get like volume from it, right? Where like an old school trim sheet is just going to be flat texture, and then maybe you go in and hand model like a ridges and all that kind of stuff, right? That's the traditional way. Whereas I think we're getting to a point where I would honestly use either I would go and start from a trim sheet and then use a height data, or I would then make like an atlas, which is basically I would use all the wooden kit pieces, I would treat them as unique, but compile them onto the same texture, so that I have like one texture that contains all of my like wooden beams and wooden planks and all that kind of stuff, so that I can then build 3D with them and then bend them and distort them and cut them up and all that kind of stuff. But then I'm starting from like a high resolution mesh that I can cut up, rather than building my way up from a trim sheet to then get high resolution stuff. But yeah, this is very much leading into, this can cause a lot of issues when it comes to like optimization, right? Because if you aren't reliant on nanite at this point, this can be a very dangerous workflow to use, because then you need to be very specific with how much optimization you do, because you need to crunch down your geometry count to like a low number, right? Where with nanite, you don't, I mean, you still need to keep it into account, but you don't need to really be worried about like the polycounts that we're talking about now. Tileable meshes, potentially, yeah, I've seen people refer to them that way. I see it more as like a kit. Like think of like a modular kit in that sense, but you're treating all the individual pieces as like unique things that then get like built into like what you need that kit to be, right? I hope that makes sense, because that was the thing that I was actually doing on my medieval scene. I made everything using the traditional trim sheet method, right? Which does work, but I think in current day standards, especially in like AAA, like it's very hard to it is very hard to make them look good. You know? You don't have that like raw geometric density that you would want to see from games these days, right? That's why I was thinking about like revising the workflow that I have. And basically, I was doing this like very, very convoluted thing because I already had my trim sheet data, and then I was using that data to the height map specifically to then displace my geometry and then rebuild my actual geometry around this. Is there an online article about this? No, there probably isn't. I mean, you can probably find them, but I think all this stuff is like pretty. Well, to be fair, there might be articles, but I've not looked into this. I think you can see some earlier mentions when it comes to like the first original release of like Nanite, right? They were talking about like geometry trim sheets specifically. I think they were the first ones that brought it up. And they have like this like Mayan temple scene that they use in the beginning, right? Where they actually just have like a trim sheet, but it's actually just like a reusable section of a mesh that can be used as a trim, but it's actually just like a unique mesh, basically. The roof in the last example is good for a tileable mesh there. The way that I would do the roof in this, so if we go back really quickly just to cap things off, the way that I would do this is I wouldn't do a tileable mesh. Well, depends on what you mean by that, right? I would sculpt like a couple of like individual tiles and then just use like a geonodes tool to like scatter them. Just that is the way that I did the roofs in my medieval scene, for example. So I would just have like a collection of tiles. Let's say, I don't know, 6 to 9 tiles or something like that, like with a broken couple of entries there for mixing it up. And then I would then use geometry nodes to just like scatter them on top of like my asset. You can do it like with an array and with some like manual finicky, like you can do it in whatever way you want. But that's the way that I would do it. If you really want to go for that like really unique look, right? Most roofs though, they don't work like that, right? Like if you look at most roofs in games these days, what they'll do is, it's actually going to be like a pretty interesting roof to talk about. What they'll do is everything inside of this, that is going to be POM for the most part. Parallax occlusion mapping, which is a technique to like fake depth, right? But it's cheaper than actually using geometry. Then what we can use on the surroundings, those are actually going to be mesh, right? So wherever you see like anything on the silhouette, that's where we use like real geometry. That's why this one is cut out, because you can actually see the silhouette. So we use like real geometry here, and then the rest of it is going to be faked. And this is a technique that you see, I think, even in Black Desert as well. Crimson Desert, sorry, not Black Desert, different game. Let me see if I can find some examples, because people were talking about this. Oh no, can't find the example. Let's see. Last thing that I'll talk about today, because I do really need to go.
So now onto something different. Detect some number.
I actually don't know if it's going to be in here.
Pearl Abyss are using on many surfaces.
So you can kind of see this here, right? Like the silhouette is just, well, in this case, they're not using POM. They are using like, what was it? Like they have like a special technique where they basically have like POM coming out of the surface as well, so that it looks like actual geometry. Yeah, you can still see the difference, right? Like you can see the cutouts between like the actual texture in the middle, and then you see like the individual things scattered on the edges. So there must still be some limitations, which is interesting. Yeah, let's see. Any more examples of this stuff? I don't think so. Yeah, just wanted to showcase that really quickly. Cool. And I think that's my time is up. I'm already out of time anyway. So I thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed the show. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Do the YouTuber thing, you know, help me out, help the community out. Really appreciate it. But without further ado, I'm heading out. I wish you all a creative evening, weekend, and week. And we'll see each other. Oh no, actually, we'll see each other on Friday. We'll be together for some portfolio reviews. So yeah, I will see you all on Friday.